This is an interview with Melvin Plotkin on March 18th, 2001, and the address is
34 Teaberry Lane,
in
East Hampton.
East Hampton, Massachusetts. We are taping this for the Jewish Historical Society, the future one, and we're asking Melvin Plotkin for permission to use this material freely in the future.
You have it.
Thank you. The interviewer is Ken Schoen.
So I'd like to begin by asking you your Hebrew name, the names of your parents.
Okay, my name is Mordechai Ben Levi Yitzchak.
Okay. Can you tell me something about your parents, where they came from, how they met, and how they settled in Ethel?
They came from Russia, from Shibovitz. I have practically no background. My father was a member in the Tsar's private staff in 1904. You know, he didn't want to stay in Russia, so he bribed his way out, and he got to America. But he didn't have any money to bring. There was a wife and two children they left behind. They were first cousins, my mother and father. And after a couple of years, he saved up enough to send for them, and they came over. And they settled in Ethel because he had a couple of sisters who had preceded him. They lived in Boston, and they heard about this junk dealer in Ethel, Jewish fella, and he had a job open for my father, so he came to Ethel, which is the last place in the world I thought he'd ever. So he was a very pious man. Originally he wanted to go to Palestine, but he never got there. So that's how the family started in Ethel.
What do you think interfered with his getting to Palestine?
I really don't know what happened. While he was raising a family, I guess, just couldn't swing it. Had a lot of children.
Can you tell us about some of his children?
Yeah, we had, there was 11 children.
And what became of them?
Well, there's only two of us left now. And most of them settled in the Ethel area. My brother Louis, he was the oldest. He had a furniture store for years in Orange. And my sister Lena, her husband was Aaron Gordon, and they had a shoe store in Orange for some years. Then there was Abe and Jake. They worked the paper mill in Irving. Probably you've heard of the houses there. No, never have. Very prominent people from Holyoke they were originally.
Jewish people?
Yes, yeah. And it came down to my brother. My father always said he was going to send one of his kids to college somehow. So Harry was the one, and he graduated Harvard, and also Harvard Law School. He was on the Harvard Law Review, and when he got out of college, that was in the 30s, they weren't hiring any Jews much in those days. So Felix Frankfurter was one of his professors. He got him a job out in Chicago. That's where his first job was. And eventually wound up in Washington, working for the Federal Communications Commission. Then he became part of a law firm, and he passed away here several years ago. And one of my brothers, Robert, was next to Harry. He wound up in Israel for a few years, but they came back. He missed the grandchildren too much. So he's passed away too. And I have a younger brother who's left, and that's it. The rest of them are all gone. I had a sister who died Many years ago, she was only 49 at the time.
So when your parents settled in Ethel, someone helped them get settled? How did that all happen where they found a house and they started out there?
Well, there was a little Jewish settlement. I guess they sort of helped each other.
Who was there at the beginning that you know about, that you remember in this Jewish settlement?
Well, the Zacks. There was Chaim Zack and his two other brothers. They also were related to the Katz family. They settled in Ethel. And then there was the Gabus family and the Cuman family. And some of them were older than those people, but I really don't know them at all.
And where they settled in Ethel, is that the house they stayed in for your childhood and later?
No, we moved around quite a lot. My father was sort of really, after he graduated from the junk band, he became interested in real estate, buying and selling houses. So we moved quite often. He'd buy a house and he'd sell it right out from under it, and we'd have to move again. But the first, well, he got over here in 1904, and I think it was about 1911 when they had the first congregation, and the first minions were in our living room, about 1911.
You described your father as a pious man.
Very pious.
Can you give us a sense of his observance?
Very, very much observed Saturday.
He didn't work on the Sabbath.
No
sure.
way, no. And he didn't restrict us too much. You know, he used to go upstairs, I remember this, he'd go upstairs for a nap Saturday afternoon after dinner, him and my mother. We just have the ball game on the radio downstairs. He made believe that he didn't know it, you know. But he was a great baseball fan, it's amazing. He knew the batting average of all the players, and standings and all that stuff.
So he was raised Orthodox. Do you know anything about his parents from Russia?
All I know is that his father came over here to live with us and two other brothers. And his father, I think, spent 13 years in the army there in Russia. I don't know how they got him out. I remember him. He died. He was 85 when he died here. He was living with us at the time.
Was your father and grandfather the kind of people who would be studying Talmud or Torah? Would they be those kind of interests for them?
I don't recall them doing that much. No.
Would he be praying every day?
He davened 3 times a day.
3 times a day.
Yes.
Would you say that he wanted all his children to be Orthodox?
Well, he never really pushed us. You know, we were brought up Orthodox, and we went our, you know, we sort of went our own way. But all of us were brought up in an Orthodox way.
So you recall him wearing tefillin every day?
Oh, yes.
Every day?
Yes.
And were you wearing tefillin too?
For some time after my bar mitzvah, but kind of petered out.
What do you think happened to
I
you
don't
and your siblings that you didn't stay Orthodox? What do you think were the pressures on you or the influences that may have directed you other ways?
I don't know, just started drifting. I always observed the traditions, but as far as the service, I never got into it. We used to go to shul every Saturday.
The shul, you said, began in your father's living room, in your parents' living room.
Right.
How did that happen? How was it that your father became kind of the organizer of this community?
He was probably the most pious man in the community and was looked up to by the other Jews of the time. So he was sort of the leader. There was 2 of his brothers here. They also had families, and they looked up to him quite a bit. He was the leader of the family.
Was that because of his personality, his style? What was it about him?
Well, I never knew my father too well, really. I was only 15 when he died. And he just was, well, he was cut out to be a leader, he knew his stuff on that.
Did you have a Torah in the house?
No,
So on the Sabbath, when you would read you'd be expected to read the Torah portion.
I really don't know if they had a Torah there.
You don't remember
in
that?
those days, no.
Uh-huh.
No,
For how long did you have the service in your house?
I couldn't tell you.
At what point? So the shul started when? The actual shul?
I'd say around 1913, 14, somewhere around there.
And did they select a site and build it, or was there a building
No, they
there?
bought, one of the Jewish families owned this house, and most of the Jews had settled right around there, and he sold the house to the Jewish community.
Can you tell us the names of some of the streets that the Jews settled in?
Yes, it was South Street, that's where I was born, and Pine Street, Man Court. Those were the main ones, yeah. Most of the Jews settled right around there, in a small neighborhood there.
Was that because the Sabbath, they didn't want to
Yes,
travel?
I would say so, yes.
Would you say that most of the Jews who settled, a lot were your family, but the other ones were observant as a group?
Not as observant as my parents,
But they were observant?
yes.
What would happen if you had some of the people in the community who weren't observant? Was there a sense of some friction about that? Can you remember that?
No, I really couldn't tell you much about it. There were some that didn't observe much.
Were there some people back in the 1910, 1920, 1930 and on who were Jewish but didn't observe at all and didn't want to be known as Jews?
I don't recall any of those, no. I think most of them knew they were Jews and observed it.
Let me go back to some of the streets and merchants. Can you remember specifically some of the Jewish businesses that were in town, the names of the owners and where they were located?
Well, let's see. There was Glazer, family of Glazer. He owned a little clothing store right in that neighborhood. And he was the first shochet in that community.
He just rose to the occasion? Was he trained, or they just said, you're the shochet?
I don't know, but he was a great guy, this guy.
What made him great?
Well, he knew how to get all the people together. I mean, he always could find a reason why it was okay to do this and do that,
Would the people, Jewish people, shop in that store specifically for clothes?
Yes.
What kind of clothes were they?
Mostly men's, I think it was. Just a little small store.
And who else was on his block?
Well, there was a family by the name of Nepris. We used to use that telephone to call up somebody to come to the meeting because we didn't have.
To the Minion.
Yeah.
They were the only ones who had a phone.
Well, they were ones right there handy, right across the street from the shul they lived. And there was another family, another Zach family. They sold confectionery, candy and that kind of stuff. That was the wife that was. The husband was a grubber young, what we call.
A grubber young.
Yeah.
A grubber young means,
Well, he thought of a kind of a gross kind of a guy.
uncouth.
Very uncouth, yeah.
You want to tell anything of what made him, what would be considered uncouth in those days?
Well, the language he used.
Oh.
He didn't swear, but he had these ridiculous expressions. He'd meet a young kid, the hosta bebel, and stuff like that.
The hosta bebel. What does that mean?
It's a belly button. And another was, did you cock today? Isn't that brilliant?
Did people speak to each other in Yiddish?
Yes. Yeah, I spoke Yiddish at home.
You did.
Yeah. Yeah.
And lots of the other families did also?
I would say so, yes. Yeah.
Okay, who else was on that block or nearby, other merchants?
Well, there was, some of these people, I don't even know what they did for a living. They didn't seem to have any jobs.
They were Luftmenschen.
Yeah, I guess so. But they lived.
Tell us about the junk merchants. I hear there were quite a few.
Yeah.
What was that all about?
Well, I guess they'd travel house to house, picking up junk and selling it and stuff.
What was considered junk in those? We're talking about rags? What were we talking
Rags
about?
was a good part of it, yeah. Rags, yeah. Yeah.
These men would knock on the door, and they'd say, "Junk man?" What would the
I
procedure?
guess so. Yeah, that's where a lot of them got started, in the junk business.
And what did they do with the junk?
Well, you'd sell it. You'd refurbish it or whatever, I don't know, and sell it.
Do you recall the people who were doing junk in those days?
I think it's in there. Baker was the original junk dealer in Ethel. I think his name was Baker.
And what became of... Well, I'll give you some names.
Okay.
Okay? We got Isaac Glazer.
Mm-hmm.
Then we got the Zach brothers. We got Joe and Harry.
Right.
We got Reuben and Eva Katz.
Eva Katz was Reuben Katz's wife.
And what did you say they did? Reuben did?
I never knew him to do anything, but they lived. Maybe the kids supported him. I don't know how it worked.
What about Barney and Ada Friedman?
Yeah, what did he do for a living? I don't know. I think he had something to do with the junk business too.
And what about the Krupnik? You know the name Krupnik?
Krupniks, yeah. They were related to the Zacks also.
I see. It talks here in this issue about your father's name. Do I have it right? Is Leivik?
Leivik.
And
Leivik Yitzchak.
his father, Shimon Pesach,
Yeah.
remembered being chapped as a 13-year-old boy and serving 18 years.
Right.
He urged his son to run off to America. As a good chassid, Leivik sought the advice of his Rebbe.
Yeah.
If I escape to America, what will happen? How can I survive as a Jew in a treifel land? Gay, the Rebbe said, a good Jew will be a good Jew wherever he goes. Since he could only borrow enough to bribe his own way to the border, Leivik left his wife Chena and their children Louis and Lena
Yeah.
in Ashipovich.
Right.
Two sisters already in Boston had heard that Abraham Baker, a peddler in Ethel, needed help. With the $7 a week Baker paid him, Leivik repaid his loan, rented a tenement on South Ethel Road, and bought his first furniture, a table and chair at Higgins, for $1 a week. That was 1904.
Mm-hmm.
I'll continue reading. Leivik borrowed more money. If you want to comment, please do. This time from the area's wealthiest man, Joe Rome of Gardner, and sent for his family. Soon after, Leivik's brother Jacob arrived in Ethel with Nechami and the children Izzy, Bill, and Rose. Then came brother Joe, whom the same Joe Rome had introduced to the beautiful Bessie Arik. Comments?
I know she was always rated as a beautiful girl.
According to the Ethel transcript of June 10, 1906, Joseph Plotkin of Ethel was married to Miss Bessie Arik of Gardner. At Rome's new block in Gardner last Tuesday, the affair was one of the most elegant and elaborate ever witnessed. Leivik and Chena's children Louis, Lena Gordon, Bessie Knapp, Melvin Norman, and their daughter-in-law June are current members of the shul. You want to say anything about this? Anything we just added here?
No, I think that covers it pretty well.
Okay, how about Jacob Garbos?
He was pretty prominent in business in Ethel. He owned a shoe store. He also owned quite a little real estate. He owned 2 theaters. And
So he had a shoe store. He bought the Capitol and York theaters,
yeah,
the Fishman Block,
Fishman Block. That was retail establishment, retail building.
The Woolworth building?
Yeah,
The Pequig Hotel?
Pequog.
What was that?
Well, there's a hotel right on the corner of right on the corner of Main Street and Exchange Street.
And he's the one who sold the house at 411 Pine Street, which became Agudat Achim.
Mm-hmm.
I see. So I'm going to read you some names, see what you can remember these. These are charter members of the first shul. Abraham Rothschild.
I've heard of him, but I didn't know him.
Charlie Kuhlman?
Cumin.
Kuhlman.
Yeah.
What did you say about him?
Well, he was in the second-hand furniture business, and he was quite a man about town.
A ladies' man.
Yes. Yeah.
It sounds like there were a lot of furniture stores in Ethel.
Well, there was quite a few. Yeah.
Ethel must have been a thriving town.
It hasn't grown. It's the same as it was 75 years ago.
But it did quite well in those
Yes,
days.
it was. Yeah, yeah.
Can you recall how many people approximately lived in Ethel, let's say in 1920?
I'd say around 10,000.
And how many were Jews?
Oh, there probably was 30 families.
So we're talking about maybe 150,
Maybe.
200 people.
Yeah, at the most, yeah.
And can you recall how many would come to shul on a Shabbat?
Well, I don't remember how many, but we always had a meeting.
You always had a minion.
Always had a meeting.
Okay. Jacob Lessem,
I've heard of him, but I don't know nothing about him.
Isaac Smargunsky,
Yeah, I've heard of him also.
Samuel Nathanson, Isaac Glazer,
Yeah.
Reuben Katz, Barnett Friedman,
Mm-hmm.
anything, Isaac Wolper?
Yeah, I know him, but I can't tell you too much about him.
If you were walking down the street in those days, did the Jews look distinctively different than the non-Jews?
I don't think so.
Did they dress very similar?
I think
There was nothing that,
they wouldn't stand out from the crowd.
did they have their heads covered? Can you remember that at all?
Some of them wore yarmulkes and some didn't.
They did.
Yeah.
What
My
was,
father always wore a yarmulke.
always.
Yeah.
What was the reception of the Jews by the non-Jews? What was the relationship like in this small town?
I don't think we ever had any big problems. No, we got along pretty good together. We used to have a little problem, with the school. The principal was kind of an anti-Semite, and of course none of us went to school on any Jewish holiday, but some of the others that weren't too observant did. So we got pretty upset about it. Well, how come these people are in shul and you're not? So we said, go ask them why they're in shul. They're not here because it's a Jewish holiday. Well, he couldn't do anything about it, but he didn't like it much.
Did being in that school, did you feel different?
No, we got along pretty well. Didn't have any problems that I can think of. Didn't care for the assemblies because they always had, readings from sometimes it was the Old Testament, sometimes it's the New Testament. But that's the way it was.
When you think of your friends in elementary school or junior high school or high school, were most of them Jewish?
Most of my friends, I'd say, were Jewish, yeah.
Can you think of some friends of yours who weren't Jewish?
Yeah. Lithuanian, Polish.
Can you tell me about a few of them?
I never got too close to them, I wouldn't say.
What did the non-Jews do for work in Ethel, in that area? What was the
We had
industry?
the L.S. Sterrett Company. It was a big tool factory.
L.S. Sterrett?
L.S. Sterrett. It's still
How do you
there.
spell that?
Starrett.
It's a tool company.
Yeah. They employ about 800 people.
And what other companies were there?
There was a Union Twist Drill Company. They were bought out by Lytton, and then they had a lot of union problems, and they finally closed up shop and left Ethel entirely.
What other companies, other big companies?
There was a shoe factory that was owned by McElwain, had a factory there. Then it was bought out by a Jewish fellow named Sid Anson. And he was there quite a few years. Yeah, he was very prominent in the show, raising money to build a new chapel when we were outgrowing the small one there.
Let's go back to the town for a second. Give me a little geography. What other towns are near Ethel, and were there Jews in those towns who would come to Ethel as the center of Jewish life?
Well, the nearest one, most prominent one would be Orange.
Mm-hmm.
Some of us lived in Orange. And then there were little villages like Warwick and Royalston and New Salem and Petersham, places like that. Very few Jews. Most of them settled right in Ethel or Orange. And we also had some in Irving, which is 5 miles beyond Orange.
But there was no other Jewish congregation. It was Ethel.
That was it, yeah.
Who were the Jews who lived in Orange?
Were
Some
mostly
of the
Plotkins.
names. The Plotkin.
Yes.
So you grew up in Orange or Ethel or both?
I grew
Back
up
and
in
forth?
Ethel,
Yeah.
but when I got married, we moved to Orange, so that was 1949.
Tell me more about this Irving paper mill that is owned by Jewish people.
Yes.
Give me some information about the Jewish people, about how they were viewed by their workers. They were known as Jews, that the Jews owned this business?
Yes. The owner was Morrishausen, and he had two brothers, Phil Hausen and Dave Hausen. And they were a big employer. They had about 600 employees there in Irving. And they used to do a lot for the Gentile community too.
What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, they practically funded a church there for the, I forget what the denomination was, but they gave a lot of money to that kind of stuff. And they were very prominent in the Jewish community too.
Would they just come out for holidays, or would they come on the Sabbath, the Housemen?
No, I didn't see them on the Sabbath. It was mostly holidays. They were not pious people, but they were Jewish.
They actually started this Irving paper mill?
No, it was, I think it was some sort of a bankrupt setup. And the banks had the mill, and they put Morrishausen in charge of redeeming it.
Like it was in receivership.
Yeah.
But there was no shul in Irving either.
No, very few Jews in Irving.
So Ethel really was the Jewish center.
That was it, yeah. There probably was 4 or 5 Jewish families in Irving.
Total.
Yeah, and they all worked in the paper mill.
Do you remember any of them?
Yeah, there was Mort Slavin and his wife, and Morris Rubin, and Mike Hyman. That's pretty near covers. There wasn't too many.
I understand. I want to get back to the shul now. I understand that you would, on certain holiday, you let goats into the shul. Do you know about that?
No, never heard that.
I heard from one of your, one of the congregants that on one of the holidays there used to be goats coming into the shul. You don't remember that, so that's just a legend, huh?
I think so. I never heard that before.
Do you know about goats coming into the shul?
I don't think Dan would know.
No. Can you recall some of the celebrations in synagogue?
Well, we used to have some big celebrations in Torah.
What would go on?
A lot of drinking and dancing and whooping it up. And we carried that tradition right up until a few years ago, but it's kind of petered out now. In fact, the shul is practically kaput, I'm afraid. It's gone way down.
In terms of Simchat Torah, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
When you said we drink, are you talking about drinking
Schnapps.
schnapps?
Mm-hmm.
Is this something that the men would do, or the women also?
Just men, I'd say.
Just the men.
Yeah. Women didn't carry the Torah, of course, and none of that stuff.
So did the Orthodox? Did the shul remain Orthodox?
It was Orthodox, but then it became conservative.
Can you tell us how that happened, how it evolved?
Well, it
from-
just evolved over the years that more and more people didn't go for Orthodoxy, so it's just by different votes. In fact, after so many years, the women became members. They could even go up to the Torah, which was unheard of in the early days, of course.
Are you suggesting that they weren't members before that, or they weren't considered?
Well, they weren't. The man was the member. His wife was just part of the family. But
So it's a very traditional Orthodox shul.
very, yes.
So at a certain point, there were so many members who weren't Orthodox that they kind of
Yeah.
encouraged its movement toward conservative.
Yeah, otherwise it wouldn't have made it. You know, you've got a small community. You had to embrace all the factions. We had some Jews who were Reform and conservative and Orthodox. We had three-way split.
Were there any, talking about the women now, were there any single women in the community? And if so, what became of them? Or were there any widowed women in the
There
community?
was widows in the community. My mother was a widow for many years, and she went to shul on all the holidays. And women were, well, this is in the old shul. The women were upstairs. And
The old shul is which one?
Pine Street.
That's the original one.
That's the original.
And can you describe what it looked like inside?
Well, the bima was downstairs in the middle, surrounded by
Was it surrounded like circular or just straight back? Chairs were...
all around it,
Uh-huh.
and the women were upstairs.
So you would walk, there was a gallery upstairs
Yes,
surrounding it.
yes.
Uh-huh. Could you see the women? You would look up and you
You
could
could
see
see
them?
them. Well, in fact, some of them, they got to talking a little bit. One of the men downstairs is all Schweigweiber.
Schweig.
Yeah.
Schweigweiber. Do you know who built the original synagogue? How that came about?
Well, the building was there.
What was the building? Remind me.
I don't know what the building was before we had it. I don't know what it was.
And then what happened after you? How come you left Pine Street?
Well, we just outgrew it, and the community became more modern. And what happened was the Chills, you've heard that name. They owned the shoe factory in Orange, and they had no children. And when they passed away, they left all their money to the community to build a chapel. So we had built, in 1950, we had built the community center, and we were holding services there already. But in 1954, they had left this money, and we built the chapel. It's the Rose and Samuel Chill Memorial Chapel, and every Rosh Hashanah, we say Kaddish for them, because they left about $40,000 to build the shul.
Where is that shul?
That shul is on the corner of isn't that pathetic? I can't think of the street. Union Street and Walnut, I think. Yeah, Walnut. Union and Walnut.
Is that the place where people daven now?
That's where we go. Yeah.
Were there any Jews in the construction business?
No,
Not at all.
no.
So this chapel, do you know how it got designed? Did someone come to the community
The
and
houses,
say?
the houses knew this outfit in Holyoke was a big construction outfit. I can't think of the name now. They built it,
Uh-huh.
you know, to the specifications.
Can you describe what it looks like? This new one?
Well, it's got a high arch ceiling, something like this here. It's really a beautiful building.
It's quite magnificent.
It is. It's a nice looking building.
So the beam is on top. It's like a raised platform,
Yes.
and people come up. I see.
People go up to the beamer, yeah.
And it's all wood. What does the outside look like of the building?
The outside is brick.
And this was built. And this is the original shul.
No, this
What is that?
is the entrance to the
To the new one.
new one.
I see, okay, let
Go
me hold
through here,
that up.
this is the shore right here.
I see, let me hold that up. This is from the memorial, no, this is from the honorary booklet that was done for 75 years of the shul. And here's what it looks like. Okay. And there are more pictures here which we might just include while we're taking some pictures for a moment. Can you think of any funny events that took place in your years in the shul? Some things that were just unexpected, that were really, really funny in the community.
Well, I don't know about any funny. We had some problems with people who didn't want to pay. You always have those problems in every shul.
Can you give us a couple of examples?
I can give you one example. One of the Zach brothers, Joe Zach, it got so bad that we hired a cop to keep these people out. It was bad, really. So the guy comes to shul and he hadn't paid his dues. So they told him to go home. Quite a ruckus ensued over that. Well, he went home and he paid up.
You mean to say he came to Shabbos, to shul, let's say?
That was, I think,
Or Rosh
I know it was
Hashanah?
on Rosh Hashanah.
And you had a cop stationed outside, and he said if he shows up, he's not praying?
That's right.
Can you remember this distinctly?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because there was quite a ruckus over it.
On Rosh
After
Hashanah.
1 year, they cut that stuff out. It was bad news.
That was quite a clever solution, though, to make people
Sure
to
was.
pay up, right?
Yeah.
But this happened more than once, with people not paying their dues. Were there any sad events that you can remember that the community got together as a community, either to mourn or to be together?
Yeah, well, there was several, prominent people that died in the community, and it's kind of sad, yeah.
Can you think of a few that come right to mind?
Well, it was, I can't think of any offhand that strike me.
Okay. One thing that
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
we had one member, he was working on his truck. He had it on a jack, and the jack let go, and the truck came down on him and killed him. He had two small children. That was a very sad affair.
remember his name?
Yeah, Lubroth.
Lubroth.
Lubaroth, yeah.
What became of his children? Did the community get together to help
She
them?
moved to Amherst.
Yeah.
I think she's a member of the Amherst Shore, isn't she? Yeah.
I want to go back now to the 1930s and Nazism and what was going on in Europe.
Mhm.
I'd like to know how you heard about it, when you began to understand what was happening to the Jews in Europe, and how the community got to know it. At what point did they realize what was going on?
I don't think the information got out much. I went into the service in 1942, in March. We knew that Hitler was was an anti-Semite bastard and everything, but what was going on, we didn't know any particulars. And they kept it from us. They kept it from the Jews, actually. And I used to think Roosevelt was a great guy. I voted for him until I found out about some of the stuff that was going on there with the ship St. Louis, that they wouldn't let them land and stuff like that.
Where did you serve when you were?
In Pacific.
Where? What can you tell us something about that?
I served the Guadalcanal, the Solomon Islands, the Philippines, and New Guinea, all through the whole South Pacific.
What was your unit? Can you remember your?
It was the Air Force. I was in the fighter squadron.
What position did you?
I was supply sergeant.
Were you able to keep up with some of the people you knew in those days from the Air Force? Did you want to?
I went to a few reunions there after the war, but it kind of petered out. The thing I remember the most, one of the things there is Guadalcanal. It was Passover time, and the Jewish Welfare Board put on a big Seder for all the Jews that brought the stuff in from Australia. They had waiters there with tablecloths. I never saw so many Jews in my life. All the Catholics became Jews that day. They all wanted to come to the service. But that was an outstanding service. I'll never forget that.
Were there a lot of Jews in your unit?
No.
Did you experience any?
My brother and I were in the same unit,
You were?
incidentally, yeah.
That's unusual.
Yes. Well, they wanted to split us up after the Sullivan brothers. They didn't allow brothers to serve in the same unit, but we wanted to stay together, and they let us.
Did you experience any anti-Semitism?
Just the one time. This guy's name was Lou Abrams. I thought he was Jewish, to be honest with you, but I think he must have been a German. And we were talking one day on just sitting around, and he comes up and says, "Oh, Hitler's doing okay. We only can get rid of all the Jews there." Well, that really got me mad, so I stood up. I said, "Well, why don't you start with me? I'm a Jew." Well, he turned all the colors and everything. And he apologized. I had no use for that guy forever after that. That's the only incident that I can remember that had any problem.
And what about then, that must have been quite upsetting though.
Yes,
I can
very.
imagine. That was very courageous of you just to stand up and...
Well, he just did it. He probably would have killed me. He was a big guy. But he knew he was a jerk, and he let it go.
When did you learn about what had happened in Europe? Can you remember that?
After the war, I'd say, mostly. I got out of the service in 1945, in May. That's when we started to find out all the stuff that was going on. Well, actually, when I was coming home for 30 days, rest and recuperation, Germany surrendered. And that's when we really started to find out what was going on in Europe.
In the next 5 or 10 years, did any refugees come up to your area to settle?
We had several families that settled in Orange. What was that? Clark was one of them. Yeah, but not too many. We just had a few. Most of them settled in the bigger cities.
And when you came home from the war, how were you received back in your town?
Very well.
Were there celebrations?
Yes,
there
yeah.
were.
Had a big parade.
What kind of newspapers did you get?
We had a daily paper in Ethel, the Ethel Daily News, and published every day except Sunday. It was an afternoon paper.
And remember who owned it? Who controlled it?
The guy's name was Fairchild, I think.
Oh, Fairchild Publications?
Yeah,
You mean like it was a local guy?
it was a local guy.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, it wasn't Fairchild Publications, but I think his name was Fairchild.
It was a local guy, a local paper?
Well,
with
he moved to Ethel. He bought the paper.
They would have international and national news included with local news?
Yeah.
And it was a daily?
A daily, yeah.
Was
It's
there
still published today.
Was there any reporting of what was going on in terms of Europe?
Well, it got out, later on it got out good.
Did other people from the shul serve in the war? Can you remember that?
Yes.
Can you remember some of the people and where they were?
Yeah, one of them was Bill Gabos. He was a lawyer. Sam Glazer, he was a dentist. Morris Zach, he was one of the offspring, my age. He worked in the shoe factory before the war. And his brother also, Abraham Zach, was also in the service. And I had 3 other brothers, all of us were in.
The Springfield newspapers, by the way, go back to that, had information about what was going on in Europe and they published it, but Ethel didn't. So you think there may have been some censorship or this particular person?
I don't recall them publishing much of anything about this stuff.
Okay. I'd like to What about on the radio? Any news on the radio about what's going on in Europe in terms of the Jews?
Well, not too much, really. No.
And people in the community didn't have family over there that they lost touch with, or they'd say, well, I wonder what happened to this.
No.
Nothing like that.
No.
So it was kind of a mystery.
Most of my family originated from Russia.
And it had gotten out, a lot of them.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. I want to ask you about going back to the, well, let's go from after the war. We have the beginning of the State of Israel.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about the feeling of the Jews in your community toward the establishment of the state. Was there activity in the 1930s? Was there Zionist groups? Was there active?
Mostly in the 40s.
Can you give me an idea about it?
The Ethel community became very much involved in raising money, going to these other towns and trying to encourage people to give. It's very, very prominent.
How would they do that? Would they have
Have meetings.
And would people say, I pledge so much?
That's right.
It would be like a pledge.
That's right. Yeah.
Was this initiated by the local community, or did people come from the outside and help?
Both.
Both.
Yeah.
What would be the bigger Jewish community that would send people to you? Would it be out of Worcester? Would it be out of Springfield? Who was the...
Worcester would probably be more than, some from Boston also.
Can you recall some of the people from Worcester? Was there a shul in Worcester that was kind of a sister shul to yours in some way?
No, really not much of a connection.
Okay. Let's go back now to the shul. Tell me about some of the rabbis.
Well, we had some real dillies.
I'd like to hear about the dillies.
Well, they never lasted over 1 or 2 years.
Uh-huh.
Half the shul members didn't like them. They get fired them and hired another one.
What kind of issues were they didn't like them?
I don't know. It just didn't like the way they operated or something. I don't know.
Was there one rabbi who pretended to be a rabbi but wasn't really a rabbi?
Yeah.
Can you tell us that story?
That story is, his name was Math.
Math?
Math, M-A-T-H. And he had a terrific voice. Jeez, this guy could run a service. I mean, he could have been in a big community. But he was a ganef, I don't think he was even a rabbi. I'm pretty sure he wasn't. Well, anyway, we had a chance to get rid of him. So this is bad, but he went up to North Adams and somebody in the community gave him a pretty good recommendation, so they hired him. It was a bad scene. That's the way we got rid of him. I remember once when I was in Israel, I was in the Haganah Museum, and you get to talking to people, so this young fellow was standing next to me. And, we got talking where you're from and everything. And I told him I was from Ethel. Oh, he says, you're the guys that sent us Rabbi. I said, yeah, I'm not proud of it, but we did, yeah.
What year was that about?
That probably was in 1966 or 68, something like that.
So he lasted maybe a year at your shul?
Just about, yeah.
He had a great voice. Did he know anything about observance or nothing?
He was a phony way back.
And when you say he was a ganef, you mean real ganef?
Well, he ran up bills and didn't pay them, And, he was not an ethical man at all.
How did he get hired?
I don't know. I think on the basis of he had a great voice. He came in and ran the service for us. Everybody loved him. He didn't get very many great rabbis in a small community. But he took hold of the community right off.
And then he went to Northampton, and from there...
North Adams.
Oh, North Adams.
North Adams.
I see. North Adams got him.
He is something to Northampton. I don't want anybody to know that.
North Adams got him, and from there to parts unknown.
I don't know what happened. Probably in jail from there. I don't know.
Can you tell us about some of the other more illustrious rabbis?
We had
less illustrious.
We had one rabbi who was illustrious. Rabbi Lazarus. He was with us about 8 years. Had a family. He was a terrific guy. A very Orthodox man, but he did a good job there in Ethel.
What year was that about? Approximately.
Probably what, in the 60s? Yeah, 60s, yeah.
How did they happen to attract an Orthodox rabbi when they had become conservative? You had said they moved.
Well, it's very difficult to get rabbis in these small communities. And it's very difficult for an Orthodox rabbi to get jobs, I think, so he took the job. But he couldn't take it after about 7 or 8 years, and he moved to New York because he wanted to be in the observant community.
Are you suggesting that while he was the rabbi there, he accepted the fact that the women and men were together now in the...
We didn't allow women on the bema in those
No, but they sat together down below?
Yes, they sat together.
They were together.
Yeah, he accepted that, yeah.
At what point were the women allowed to participate in the service and be on the bema? When did that happen?
Well, that probably, what, in the 70s, I'd say.
And do you remember how that came about?
It was a vote of the community.
The women and men got together.
Yeah, they voted to let them in.
How did that vote come about? Did the rabbi call it together? Did the president?
No, the rabbi wasn't for it too much, but more and more people were becoming more and more non-observant, whatever you want to call it. And the women were becoming more prominent in the community, so it just worked its way in.
Can you tell me about some of the leadership in the shul? Who some of the presidents were and what they were like? And how one got to be a president of the shul?
Well, you got to be president.
How did you get to be a president?
You get to be a president by not saying no. Because if you wanted the job, you got it, even if you didn't want it. Well, I had a cousin who was president, Charlie Plotkin. Then he had another cousin who also was Charlie Plotkin, also was, then his son, Jeffrey Plotkin, has been, a lot of Plotkins have been president of the shul in Ethel. And then we had Bill Gobbles was president, and let's see who else was there. That's all I can think of right now at the moment.
And you had a board of directors, and
Yes.
you'd meet once a month
Yeah.
and talk about.
Yeah.
What were some of the things that you would talk about?
Well,
What were some of the concerns or issues?
Well, they got along pretty good. As years went by, there wasn't too much friction going on. And you got a rabbi, if he was halfway decent, he stayed.
And he was expected to do the Shabbos service.
He did the Shabbos.
Was there a Hebrew school?
There was always a Hebrew school, yeah.
Can you tell me about the Hebrew school?
Well, at the time our kids were growing up, we had a pretty good-sized Jewish community. The Hebrew school, we must have had over 40 kids in there.
And who ran the school?
Well, the rabbi ran it. And then we had several lay teachers that would.
And would it go up to like 6th grade to the bar mitzvah, and that would be it?
After bar mitzvah was
That was it?
Yeah.
Can you recall some of the bar mitzvahs? Were there some? And after the bar mitzvah, was there a celebration, and where would you hold it?
In the shul mostly.
In the social hall?
Yeah. Yeah.
Who would cater it?
We had a caterer come in.
From?
Mostly Springfield.
Kosher?
Yeah.
From Springfield?
Kosher, yeah. The kitchen was always kosher and that.
The Hebrew school, what became of it?
Well, it just kind of petered out. I don't know, we have one there now? It's very, three kids, yeah. It's petering out, it's very bad.
Would you suggest that a lot of Jews have left
Yes,
Ethel and Orange?
yes.
Why is that?
Well, there's nothing there for them, I guess. And
It was thriving, but
and
it's kind of...
it's petering out, I'd say, another couple of years, we won't have a show there anymore. It's going down. There's only about 25 members now. The only thing that's keeping it afloat is had quite a little money invested in the stock market, so there was, enough money to keep the place going, keep the building up and everything. But they don't even have services most of the year now. It's gotten down to just a holiday and
Rosh Hashanah, Yom
yeah,
Kippur.
yeah.
So there are very few Jews left in Ethel.
Yes, and the ones to the left are leaving too.
So this is really the story of a community that at one point was vibrant and
Functioning,
thriving,
yes.
functioning.
Yeah. He always had his ups and downs. It went up to down to up to down. And now I'm afraid it's seeing its swan song now.
I'd like to go back now to talk about the membership. We asked about the women. I'd like to know, were there some converts to Judaism who were members?
There is now. There was, in the last, probably 10, 12 years, there's been quite a few of them.
Quite
A lot
few.
of mixed marriages.
Who arranged, who was responsible for this?
Some of these people came in, they were already married.
It wasn't as if there was a rabbi who taught the women or men to become Jewish. They already
No,
had.
they already were. In fact, some of these mixed marriages, a lot of them are the women that are the Jews, and they're very knowledgeable. They can read from the Torah, and the kids are being brought up Jewish, and being bar mitzvahed, and all that stuff.
Can you recall back in the 20s, 30s, or 40s of Jews who left Judaism, who converted out?
No, not too much. Maybe a handful.
Can you remember this?
I don't remember who they were, and they were nothing to begin with.
But this did happen.
Yeah, a few, very few.
What would you wish now in terms of your children and grandchildren, in terms of what you've learned in your life from being Jewish? What would you wish for them?
That they remain Jewish.
Are you concerned that they may drift away from being Jewish?
That's the trend everywhere. So far, we've done pretty good. Feel very strongly. Grandchildren are coming along now, becoming marriageable age. That's where we're going to see what happens.
Have some of your children married non-Jews? Is that
No,
that has not happened?
it hasn't happened.
But your strong wishes that your children and grandchildren continue the tradition is what you're saying. Can you tell me the name? I'm sorry to ask you early. Names of your children, their names, and your grandchildren's names.
Okay, yes. We have four boys.
Now tell us what they do. Give us their names and what they're doing.
The oldest one is Larry. He's 50, and he has a consulting firm. He worked for Hannaford Brothers for 20 some odd years up in Maine. Big supermarket outfit. And he has 3 children. There's Rachel, she's 24, and a set of twins, Rebecca and Gabriel, they're 21.
And what's his wife's name?
Oh, his wife's name is Lisa. Yeah, and they're very prominent in the Jewish community in Portland, Maine.
Okay.
Yeah, they're very active in the Jewish community.
They're active in the community.
Yes.
So they're continuing that, just
Yes.
like your family was.
Right.
They've become active.
Right.
Could you see that when he was a kid, that he would?
Yes. In fact, he went to, a lot of our kids went to Israel. We sent them for at least, a period of time. And he wrote us a letter once that he wants the family to settle in Israel.
He was living your father's dream, huh? Yeah, he wanted to go to Palestine.
Then the next one is He's not married, but he's got a lady friend. They've lived together for about 15 years. She converted to Judaism unbeknownst to him, even. And I don't know if they'll ever get married. It doesn't look it, but
What's her name?
her name is Linda.
Okay.
And then the next one is Terry. He lives in Greenfield. And they have 2 children, a boy and a girl.
And what's his wife's name?
His wife's name is Marjorie. Unfortunately, they're divorced.
Okay, what's his children's name?
The children's name is Sam is the boy, and Dovra is the girl. She's about 10. And then the last one is Daniel, the baby.
Uh-huh.
He has 2 children.
And what's his wife's name?
His wife's name is Sherry.
And his children's name?
Sherry, and the girl is Sarah, and the boy is David. They're also very Jewish-minded.
They
They was in the Psalm too.
The children are going to Sheker
Yeah,
school.
yeah, the oldest one is.
Are you pleased by that?
Yes, very.
She was a Plotkin. She was Melvin's cousin. A sister. Rachel,
What did you do?
child of Larry and Lisa in Portland, Maine.
Packets.
Gabriel and Rebecca. That's one family, children of Larry and Lisa Plotkin. Stephen Plotkin, our second son, and his very special lady, Linda Baldwin, and very special. From Greenfield, this is Dovra, and this is Sam, that's brother and sister. He's 15 now, and she's 10. These are pictures a couple of years old, and they're the children of Terry Plotkin and Margie Sobel, and this is Dan and Sherry's little girl Sarah, and her brother David with his Sarah and David. And the rest of them are a repetition. This is again, these are when the kids were young, Sam and Dovra and Terry and Margie. And this is Rachel again. These are all the pictures. Oh, this is Dan's wedding. That's our original family. That's Melvin and I and our 4 sons. That's when Dan got married. That's Larry, Steve, Terry, and Dan. And I gave it to you by age. Those are our 4 sons. That's our original family. That's Melvin's parents. That's Levi Yitzchak, and that's Chiana in their younger years. And this is Chiana as she was in her later years, as I knew her before she passed away. It's the same lady that you just saw with her husband.
I wanted to ask you a couple of questions more. What did you do for a living?
I owned a liquor store for about 30 years.
How did you happen, as a Jewish man,
I know.
to get into the liquor business? How did that happen?
It became available, so I bought it.
What year was that about?
1951.
How did it become available? Who had it? What was the name of the store?
The name was Kenny's Package Store.
And where was it
It
located?
was located on South Main Street.
Was that a rundown neighborhood, a good
No,
neighborhood?
it was a decent neighborhood. It was in the business section.
And it sold basically what kind of...
All kinds of liquor, beer, and wine.
What did you do for work before that?
Well, I worked for my brother in the furniture store.
That was Plotkin's?
Yes,
Yeah.
Plotkin Furniture Store.
Yeah. What did you do there?
Everything. I sold and I delivered and a jack of all trades.
What kind of furniture would you sell?
All kinds of...
That kind.
What I see in the house here.
Everything you
That's
see
right.
here.
And where was it manufactured, the furniture?
Well, some of it would come from Massachusetts. This maple stuff was very high-grade stuff from Massachusetts, Winchendon. And then there was Bassett Furniture Company. It was in Virginia or North Carolina. So, and carpets, from Alexander Smith or Bigelow Sanford.
And how much would these go for back in the 50s, let's say, this kind of furniture?
This kind of stuff, I haven't got the vaguest idea now.
Would it be local people who would come in, or from all over the place would they come?
Well, mostly local.
Did Plotkins have a reputation for good prices or
Yes,
good quality?
yes.
What was it? Yeah?
Very, had a good reputation.
And And how many years was it a furniture store? How many years in business was it?
He was in prison from about the early 20s, until they passed away.
And then the store?
Well, his grandchildren took over, and his son-in-law. It's a sad story.
And the store's finished?
His story's finished, yeah.
Uh-huh. So you had been working in the furniture store. You went off to fight in the war.
Mhm.
You came back, worked in the store, and then this package store became available.
Mhm.
How were you able to buy it?
Well, my oldest brother co-signed the note for me.
How much did it cost?
About 40,000.
That was a lot of money.
Yes, it was. It had me worried for a long time.
Were you worried that you might have made a mistake or that you couldn't pay it back?
Well, I was worried I wouldn't be able to make enough to pay it back. And worked out okay.
What convinced you to buy it?
Well, I wanted to go into business because there was no future working for my brother there. You know, he had two son-in-laws. And
You saw they were going to come into the business.
Sure. And so I had to go.
What was it like?
And he encouraged me, and my
He did?
oldest brother, yeah.
Your oldest brother.
Yeah.
What
He
was
was
it?
sort of the patriarch of the family.
What was his name?
Louis.
Uh-huh.
Same name as my father. I don't know how that came about.
How did that happen? Huh?
He just took it. He just took the name.
And what was it like running a liquor store?
Well, it's like any other business.
Was there an age requirement to buy liquor at that
Yes,
point?
you had to be, mostly it was 21, and then they dropped it to 18, and they moved it up to 19, and now it went back to 21.
What was the most popular drink?
Well, beer was the most popular.
Can you remember some of the beers that were served in those days?
Yes.
Brands?
It's mostly still the same. Budweiser, Miller, Heineken, more or less the same stuff that you see now.
So
I sold the business in 1981.
What possessed you to sell it in 81?
Well, it was getting time to retire.
Was it a good business for 30 years?
Yeah, it was okay. Yeah,
How many days a week did you have to work there?
6.
6 days. Did you have help?
I had part-time help.
Were there characters who'd come in and buy liquor? Can you give us some of the local characters? I mean, was that kind of what it was like?
We had a few characters, but mostly it was general run-of-the-mill population.
Did you have competition in town?
Yeah, there was 2 other stores.
Why would they come to you rather than the other stores?
Well, I don't know, they liked me or
Personality.
whatever, yeah.
Did you enjoy that kind of work?
Yeah, I didn't mind it at all. It was,
You did?
You know, I enjoyed meeting with people, talking to people.
I wanted to go back to the shul for a moment. I was thinking about your parents, you know. Was there a Chevra Kadisha?
No,
So if someone passed away back in 1910, 1920, who took care of all that?
I must have brought somebody in
From
from,
Springfield or
Springfield,
Worcester,
Worcester,
and they
yeah.
would take care of it.
yeah.
And where is the cemetery?
The cemetery was nowhere. My parents were buried in Woburn,
Oh.
so
So the community never bought land
never
for
bought land,
communities?
no, we never had a
That's
cemetery.
interesting. Were there any other societies within the shul? Was there B'nai B'rith?
Yes,
Was it active?
yeah, it was fairly active for a long time.
And there were some, was there a ritual committee, things like that?
Yeah, there was. I don't know how much function they had, but there was a ritual committee.
What about-
That's the time for services, you know, all the time.
I forgot to ask you before also about bris. Were there, when you had someone had a male child,
Coming from Springfield or Worcester.
you'd have a mohel come from
Yeah,
Springfield?
yeah.
The name.
Remember the names of the mohuls offhand?
I know the one that's current now is a cousin of mine, Barry Jaffe.
Stuart Jaffe.
I mean, Stuart, yeah, Stuart Jaffe.
And he's the mohel, he comes to.
He comes, yeah.
What were the politics like in Ethel, Orange? What were the ethnic groups, first of all? Who else lived a sizable number in that town?
There's a lot of French,
Oh.
Polish, and there was quite a few Yankees, what they call them.
How do they all get along together?
Pretty good. Yeah, there was not much friction between the ethnic groups.
Did they all live in certain communities?
Yeah, more or less, yeah.
They lived among their own?
Yeah, the Yankees all lived uptown.
On top of the hill? Or?
That's right.
Yeah? The mansions?
That's right, yeah.
What did they do for business, these Yankees?
I don't know.
But you knew they were Yankees with money. You
Oh,
knew
yeah.
it growing up.
That's right, yeah, yeah.
Were there certain markets that catered to the Polish people or Lithuanians in terms of the foods? Can you remember that?
No, not really.
How did you know they were Lithuanians or Poles growing up? How would you know
I
it?
don't know. Well, I knew the churches they went to. You just knew it.
There were a lot of big churches in...
Pretty good amount, yeah.
What was the politics like in town?
It was mostly, it was Republican in the earlier days, but then it just gradually become Democrat.
How'd that happen?
I don't know, just the offspring come along and the Democratic votes came through.
Did you have a good government in town?
Yeah, it was a board of selectmen.
It was decent.
Yeah, it was okay, yeah.
Any Jews get involved in politics at all?
Yeah, some of my cousins were involved in the school committee.
What was that like for them?
It was okay.
No issues about their being Jewish?
No problems that way.
So looking back, doesn't sound like you can recall many instances of feeling singled out as a Jewish person, except for this one principle when you were a kid. But it sounds like the people kind of smoothly got along with everybody else.
Yeah, it went along okay.
Would you please tell me your name and your Hebrew name?
My name is Esther Beatrice Plotkin, and my Hebrew name is Esther Basha, and my parents is David Moshe, and my mother is Hannah Golder. And I was born in Worcester, brought up in Worcester. Do you want me to continue with it? And went to Worcester schools. When I graduated high school, I went to the Beth Israel Hospital School of Nursing. This was just at the end of World War II in 1945, when nurses were very much in need, and the government was sponsoring a nice program to entice girls to go into training at that time. So I trained at the Beth Israel Hospital School of Nursing, which in those years you lived right at the nurses' residence in the hospital and trained for 3 years to become a nurse, as it was in those days. And I did that. And just as I was ready to graduate, I happened to, through a mutual friend, meet Melvin. I'd never heard of Orange, well, I had some friends that lived in Orange, and we went out to visit. And they knew Melvin, so when a nice Jewish girl comes out to a small town, you introduce her to a nice Jewish boy. And that was the beginning of our relationship, and we were married in 2 days will be our anniversary, March 20th. In 1949. And we lived in Orange, and subsequently Melvin bought the package store, and we settled there and belonged to the Ethel Shul and built a life there. We had our 4 wonderful sons, and then 4 years ago we decided to make a change and come to here, and we love it here at the Lathrop community in East Hampton. The best thing we ever did.
Tell me about your parents. What were their names and what they did for a living?
My father was Worcester born, actually. His parents came from Europe. And I learned very recently recently about 4 or 5 years ago, from a cousin of my father's who I met in Florida when we were going there, that I'm a descendant from my grandmother's side, from the Gaon of Vilna. And I have Chinese ancestry because either his son or his grandson married a Chinese lady. And now that if you look at some of my grandchildren's pictures or my eyes, they are definitely Oriental. And so I do have Chinese, and she was apparently a very religious Jewish woman, because my grandmother, as I remember her, was a very, very religious Jewish lady, and she looked very Oriental. So was a very surprised background that I had. She spoke Yiddish fluently, and I didn't really know it until my cousin told me. he was Worcester born, and he worked in younger years. He was what they call a customer peddler. Those days you didn't get credit from, as we do today with credit cards. So if people didn't have any money, they would buy from him. He would sort of deliver to their homes, be it a dozen sheets or pillowcases or that sort of thing, and pay him out $1 down on $1 a week. And most of the time he never got paid to begin with. It was kind of a tough living. But then during World War II, he got a job in what they call the war production, the war plants, and he made a fairly decent living. And he subsequently died when he was about 70 years old. And my mother came from Europe. She was very much European, you might say, oriented, a very pious woman, very religious woman. And I had one sister. She was 10 years older than I am. And that's about all I have to offer, I guess. Any specific questions? Well, Melvin said he was one of 11 children. The one died in childbirth. Not childbirth, was about 2 or 3 years old.
Well, I don't.
So we never knew that.
Several
There was
months
10 when I got married. And Melvin's mother and father was first cousins, and he as a result of that, or we think it was that, has an extremely rare blood type. It's something that he didn't tell you. So extreme that years ago, before they started freezing blood, they needed a special blood donor for a child that was supposed to have heart surgery. And he had the same blood as Melvin, and there was no other known donors. So Melvin had to go down they had to discharge the child, and every 6 weeks he'd go down and give blood, and the child gave some blood for himself, and ultimately the child was operated on. And we made the Inquirer. It was all in the Inquirer. I could show you the write-up on it, because the caption was that they gave their own blood, and it was the first time that they froze the blood. And so there was a whole big program about all of that. And that was quite exciting at the time that it was going through. We had a reporter come to the house, and I didn't know what he wanted. We gave him all the information, but lo and behold, he wound up in the Inquirer. We didn't even know we were going to be there.
I'd like to hear more about your mother and her observance and what it was like growing up in Worcester in an Orthodox Jewish community.
Well, there was a lot of Orthodox shows, several Orthodox shows in Worcester, the big shows. Where we lived, which was the east side, it's now, there isn't any shows left there, everything's gone, but they call it to the west side. The east side at that time had 4 or 5 big shows, and mostly they were all Orthodox, and she kept a strictly kosher home. She was religious to the point of fanaticism. I mean, everything had to be exactly right, or her kashrut was very important to her. And I went to Hebrew school. In those days, Hebrew school was 6 days a week, every day after school. And we thought that was the way it had to be. We went. And I graduated Hebrew school. And
Were you in a separate class from the boys or together with the boys?
no, we were together. We were all in one class, yeah.
Did you feel that you had a certain road you were going to go on, being raised Orthodox, that you were certain
Well, it was very
path?
structured, and then when I went into nursing school, I was so kosher, being the Beth Israel Hospital, but we didn't get kosher food. And I wouldn't eat anything tray-free. If they gave me ice cream for dessert, I'd eat the ice cream first and then the meat, because I wasn't supposed to eat ice cream after meat. That's how kosher I was brought up, and thought that's what the way it had to be. But then gradually, and then when I was first married, first we weren't too religious, but then as the kids came along, we became very traditional and wanted the kids to know what a Jewish home was like, and we did that along the way.
How's your Hebrew?
I can pray in Hebrew. I don't understand a lot. I know, going back to my Hebrew school days, I can understand a lot of it, but I can't carry on a conversation with it. I mean, you have to speak it to learn it. If you learn it in Hebrew school, don't use it for 50 years. You forget the conversation type Hebrew. But I can translate some of the Siddur. I know some. I know some Hebrew, yes.
So here you are, big city girl,
Yeah.
and you come to this little shtetl
You should tell
called
them
Ethel.
that was a hard transition, very hard, because I was a city girl and I wasn't used to the clannish Plotkin group that was here, and that's all there was. You either was friends with them or you had no other friends, and we dealt with that. It was okay. I had a lot of friends in Worcester and so forth. I'm still friends today with people that I grew up with. That were very close friends.
How would you get back and forth from Ethel to Worcester?
Drove?
You had a car.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That's why she married me, because I had a good car.
What kind of car did you have?
A Plymouth. Brand new Plymouth.
I had a brand new
1947.
Plymouth. I was awestruck when I saw that. Yeah.
Did you practice nursing when you moved out to the area?
Well, when we first moved to the area, the Ethel Hospital was in the process of being built. I did do a little part-time work here and there, and then I started raising a family very quickly shortly after I was married, and had 4 boys in 5.5 years. So I was a busy lady, as you can see. And then, after that, even after Dan was born, I'd worked a little part-time. And then, when the kids were all in school, through a friend of mine whose husband was personnel manager at this particular factory, the Rodney Hunt Company in Orange, was looking for an occupational health nurse. And I came as a substitute at that time for another nurse that was ill, and she never came back. And I remained there, and I was an occupational health nurse for 26 years.
Full-time?
Full-time at the Rodney Hunt Company.
What kind of work was that? What did you have to do?
Well, if there was accidents, of course I took care of that, but then we had pre-employment physicals, a big safety program, a lot of on-the-job training. I learned I would instruct the employees on how to lift correctly, if they got foreign body in their eyes, how to handle themselves, so I'd give a lot of seminars. We had a doctor that would come in, very much health, safety, and dealt with workman's compensation, OSHA, safety programs, and I built it up to quite a job there, and I really, really enjoyed it for 26 years. Had a very good relationship. I was known as the Jewish mother, the Jewish mother of Rodney Hunt. I was a token Jew there for all the years I worked there, practically, and well, of course, of being a small town, Jews didn't work in a factory too much. Well, most of the few that were there, and I was the first Jew to ever get hired there.
Did they check your head when you?
Yeah, they all looked at me to see if I had horns, and it was. But they were all very nice to me, and I had a very good relationship there, and it was real hard to leave. We were like a family there. I really loved
What kind
the
of
place.
factory was it? What did they produce?
Water control equipment, and they had 2 separate products. One was water control equipment, these big sluice gates for dams. They would make those, and they had a foundry, which made it very dangerous. I mean, there was a lot of, they could get burns, and they did a lot of grinding, so they'd get foreign body in their eyes. So I dealt with safety glasses, safety shoes, hard hats. Everybody had to have a hard hat out and going out into the factory, including myself, and so forth. So it was quite a fascinating, interesting job.
Were there other women working in this company?
In the office it was, and then in the later years they had to have people in the factory because that was the law. So they had a few women working out in the factory. But my office, my first aid room, medical department was right inside the office building, alongside it. So that I had a very good rapport with the office girls, and I'd be involved in their functions. There was about 20-25 girls. So we did that.
When I said about checking your head, there are stories about sometimes non-Jewish people thinking that Jews have horns because of Moses coming down
Right.
with the Torah, with the Ten Commandments.
Right.
So that's kind of legends
No, once
about this.
I got there, I didn't have any problems.
What do you think that the non-Jews really knew about the Jews in this factory?
Very little.
Did
Very
they ask
little.
you questions? Were they curious at all?
Yes, yeah, that's good. I'd answer in the best way I knew how. Of course, the first thing that happened was the Jewish holidays, because I wasn't going to work on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And I told them, right off the bat that I would do that, and they said that was fine, anything that I needed. But they made a point, and I thought it was a valid one. They said, we're entitled to so many paid holidays. It would not be fair to the other employees if I got paid for the Jewish holidays as well as the other holidays. So I could take anything I wanted, but for that reason, they didn't think it was right to pay me for the holidays. I said, fine, I don't need to be paid for the holidays as long as you understand that I can take it off. And I did. There was no problem at all with that.
I'd like to get back to when you came to this small community. What years did you work in this company, from when to when? Approximately.
Well, I retired in '89. I went to work there in '63.
Okay, 63 to 89.
Yeah, 1963.
When you came to Ethel, Orange, this community, it was an Orthodox shul or already become conservative? I guess in the early 50s.
The temple?
Yeah.
The year I came there, that temple that you saw in the book was dedicated. That was the year that it opened up. I never was involved with the old shul on Pine Street that he talked about at all.
So this was a conservative shul?
It was a conservative shul, but the rabbi, as he said, eventually was an Orthodox rabbi, but he ran a conservative type congregation. Our 4 boys were bar mitzvah in that shul. They all went to Hebrew school. They had Hebrew school in that shul. And during those years, there was about 50 kids in the Hebrew school. And it was there was a lot of activity going on. But as the years progressed, in later years, the kids all grew up and left. The old-timers either went to Florida or, like us, they left for one reason or another. And the young people didn't come back, and some of those there now are few and far between. Those that are there are not particularly, some of them are mixed marriages. It's not the same flavor of caring about the shul as it was when in our time. They don't participate much. They might come on the holidays, but that's about it. So they don't have much going on there anymore. But it was a nice thriving shul. We had a Hadassah.
What was that? Tell us about the Hadassah.
Well, we had a group of women, about 20, 30 women, and we had an active Hadassah. But then again, as the years went by, we had 10 old ladies coming to a meeting, if that, and it just, we weren't very productive anymore. And when I came here and joined Hadassah, I was amazed at the different type of group that we had, with all kinds of women being a lot more enthusiastic and having a good group. But yeah, we had the sisterhood from the shul and the Hadassah and anything else, it was always the same women. It didn't make any difference. It was always the same group of women. There was no diversification of who was going to be there. Mostly Plotkins, and plus some of the others. So it got kind of boring after a while. How many times can you talk to the same people about the same things? It's not what you ever see them.
Did it seem that Northampton was far away? That
Northampton?
There was no,
It was another world for me at that time. It wasn't until Dan moved to Northampton. Ultimately, we decided to leave Orange. And then where do we go? And we figured, well, we should be somewhere near one of our kids. So we took stock of where our kids lived, and we decided this would be the best place for us to come, given the location. We didn't want to go to Portland, Maine. And Greenfield seemed a little bit not too far ahead of Orange, I guess, so we thought this would be a more thriving community. So we decided to move here, and then my daughter-in-law Sherry had heard of the Lathrop community. This place was an empty meadow when we contracted for it. It was all nothing here. But there's another group, another complex over in Northampton. So we went over there, and we didn't even know they were going to build here. And then I said, East Hampton? Who wants to go to East Hampton? I never heard of East Hampton. But ultimately we realized it was very close to Northampton, and it was where we'd like to be, and the best thing we ever did was to move here.
Were you able to, so you were involved in Hadassah here in Northampton?
Yes, yeah. Yeah, I've joined, and I was doing the cards and certificates up until Melvin got sick this past year.
Were you, so have you both remained involved in the Ethel shul?
We're still...
If I asked you what shul you belong to, what would you say?
Well, I still feel the Ethel shul is my shul. I'm sort of a stranger in a strange land here. I can't, I don't feel very close here. But I'd say we're members of both shuls right now. But my shul is really the Ethel shul, because that was our shul until 4 years ago. And when we moved here, we had dual membership.
You still do?
We still do, you know, we still dual membership. In fact, for Rosh Hashanah, one day and Yom Kippur, up until, we didn't go last year because he was sick, but before that, we were going back and forth to services over there. They don't have a rabbi, but they have a man by the name of Jim Levinson. He calls himself a Shaliach Tzibor, and he is the most magnificent human being you ever want to meet. He is so warm, he's caring, he's knowledgeable. He comes from a long line of cantors, he has a good voice. He's not a rabbi, he's not even a particularly pious man at all, but he's got a heart of gold, and he's got just a wonderful way about him, and we're very, very lucky to have him. He runs beautiful bar mitzvahs. He runs beautiful weddings, anything you ask. Well, he can't run a wedding because he's not a rabbi, but he's a justice of the peace. So, and he'll do mixed marriages, you know, try to give them whatever they want and that sort of thing, and he's very good about it. He himself is married to a lady minister. You can believe that. But he's an amazing person, he really is. His kids were brought up Jewish, his kids were bar mitzvah. And she comes to shul all the time. She's always, you know, whenever he has services, she comes. And he used to come in he was living right near Ethel, and then he moved to Cambridge because he got a professorship there as a highly educated man at Tufts. But he was coming in every other Friday night for services, but now I guess there's nobody there, so he doesn't come in anymore. But he'll come in for the holidays, and he loves it. He just does it out of love. He comes from, as I say, it's in his blood. He comes from a long line of cantors, and he enjoys it. He just enjoys what he's doing, and you can see that he enjoys what he's doing. So they were very, very lucky to have him, and he's still with them.
Do you also feel, as your husband does, that within some time the shul will close down?
I'm afraid so. It's unfortunate because there's no bodies there anymore. There's no people there. The only thing they run now is Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. That's about it. On Purim, Lenny Glick and some of the others, a few other people there. There's a woman there, Risa Richardson. She's wonderful. She can read out of the Torah, and she can read the Megillah. There was 2 people there to listen to it. It's just the people are not there anymore. The few people that are still there go to Florida for the winter, so they're gone all winter long. There's nobody there. So that's unfortunate. It really is, because it's a beautiful building, and it's we had a nice community. There's a lot of nice memories there.
Is there something you would like to say that you'd like to say to your children and grandchildren? You have an opportunity now.
Oh my children and grandchildren? Well, it's been a very rewarding experience becoming parents to such 4 wonderful boys who met 4 wonderful ladies, very special ladies. And our 7 grandchildren mean the world to us, and we love you all.
Let's pretend you